Welcome to Ask a Black Dude, where I'm pissed. Today, I am pissed. The national media and anonymous NFL scouts have done the same thing that they've always done, and that's degrade the black quarterback. Today's victim is Justin Fields, a superstar quarterback at Ohio State who had a successful college career. But for some reason, he's joining names like Cam Newton, Patrick Mahomes, and Lamar Jackson, getting hit with racist tropes and lazy analysis. Why? Why is he falling down these draft boards? Supposedly the number 2 pick in the overall draft in this year's NFL draft coming up. But instead, he's falling behind names of Zach Wilson and Mac Jones. So let's find out. Today, joining me once again is Kyle Barney, host of Under Pressure Sports. Ladies and gentlemen, he had joined us before for the N-word conversation. Did a fantastic job with that. Ooh, I'm sweating. It is hot here in Michigan for the first time in months. Under Pressure Sports every Sunday, 10 a.m. on Facebook. Go check it out. It is fantastic. Kyle, how are you doing, brother?
I'm doing fantastic, man. I'm also like you. I'm a little I'm mad. I'm confused. I'm baffled at some of the stuff that I've been hearing about Justin Fields coming out the last month or so, really.
Well, that's why I had to have you on, right? Because you are the Ohio State aficionado. You know what I mean? For those who can clearly see, Kyle is Ohio State slat. I bleed maize and blue when it comes to football. We ain't here for that today. So before I let you go, because Kyle got some words for you folks, so I'm gonna let Kyle go. Let me give Kyle some numbers real quick. So Justin Fields, for those who forgot this beast, 6'3", 230 pounds, third in Heisman voting in 2019. He is a 68% completion passer in college, 5,700 yards, 67 touchdowns to 9 interceptions. He had 178 passer rating. Oh, just in case you forgot, he also ran for 1,100 yards with 19 touchdowns. He is number 1 in all the important passing categories in the Big Ten. He destroyed Clemson, throwing 6 touchdowns against the coveted Trevor Lawrence and Dabo Swinney's team. Yet this man is falling for some reason. Kyle Barney, please tell me there's some football reasons of why they got this man falling from 2 to now maybe even out of the top 10.
Man, I wish I could. I can't not from a football standpoint understand this drop. Since the announcements of who's all coming out in the draft and everything, obviously we all know Trevor Lawrence is the best in this draft class. I've never disputed that, despite my love for Justin Fields. This is Trevor Lawrence's draft class. Is that number 2 spot? I've always had Justin Fields as number 2, but I never really had issues with people that had Zach Wilson. Now, for those that don't know, Zach Wilson, quarterback at BYU. BYU doesn't typically play anybody, didn't really play anybody this year either. They're an independent, so I mean that's partially on them. Notre Dame in the same boat as independents, but they schedule powerhouses all the time.
Right.
So you have a little bit of, maybe opponent differential between them two, but I never really had any issues with people about they just splitting hairs between him and Zach Wilson. Mm-hmm. What's really getting me is Mac Jones flying up the boards, and it doesn't really make a whole lot of sense to me. I remember when we did our first mock draft on our show, and I was talking to some guys at work, and I was like, I think Mac Jones could go, maybe as high as 15 to the Patriots at that time. And at that point, that I got laughed at and ridiculed, like, Mac Jones is not going in the top 15. He's going to be lucky to go in the first round. And fast forward 2 months later, and now Mac Jones, they're projecting to go number 3 overall.
He's a perfect Patriot, right? He's a perfect Patriot, right? That don't move in the pocket, stand there, maybe go down, maybe not, but he's a perfect Patriot, right? Like him,
oh, yeah.
Ryan Mallett, Brian Hoyer, they all get the same type of quarterback in New England, except for Cam Newton that one time.
And again, apparently this year too.
Right.
But as for Justin Fields, I don't know. I mean, if you look back at let's just take this last year alone, outside of the Northwestern game and the Big Ten championship game, and I'm blanking on what it was. It might have been Michigan State. Whoever we played before that, we didn't have Chris Olave for those 2 games. Chris Olave, his number 1 all Big Ten receiver, going to be one of the top receivers this coming season. Did not have him, and you could tell there were a lot of plays where he knows Olave is going to be at a specific spot. He wasn't on the field, and the guy filling in was not at that spot. You take away those 2 games, and he had a nearly flawless season. I mean, it took almost 4 games for him to have more incompletions than he had touchdown passes on the season. The year that Justin Fields put together was out of this world, minus those 2 games I had mentioned. And then he showed up again. One of the knocks on him was he's not a great big game quarterback. The Northwestern game, that was the Big Ten championship game. Go back to the playoff game against Clemson the year before, or whoever we played the year before. I'm blanking on it, but did not have a good game. His first year at Ohio State in the playoff. You get to that Clemson game, and he put on a flawless exhibition of quarterbacking. I mean, everything from the short passes to the deep balls he was dropping on Olave and Jamison Williams. He gives you everything you want in a quarterback, which is why I don't understand why he is falling. He's got poise under pressure. He's got the tools, the technique, all that. He's extremely smart, can figure out a playbook in the blink of an eye. I mean, he went from Georgia as a true freshman, transferred up to Ohio State, picked it up day 1, and became our starter right away.
Side note, real quick before you continue. Let's take Georgia real quick. They decided Jake Fromm was the quarterback. We gonna pass on this Justin Fields, who can run, who can pass, who can do everything we need them to do. But Jake Fromm, I'm not trying to say Jake Fromm is not, a good quarterback, but the reason why Justin Fields in the top 5 are gonna go to a top 5 team, and Jake Fromm, it's not.
Yeah, they dropped the ball a big time on that one. That was Ohio State's game was Georgia's loss on that one. So yeah, I mean, for me, to answer your question, I cannot give you any kind of football reason why. And it's not like it's anything off the field. He doesn't have off the field issues. He hasn't gotten arrested. He hasn't gotten a DUI. He has no drug issues in his past. Nothing stupid has popped up on his social media. So I honestly have no idea what the cause of this.
Do people hold the Alabama game against him too? Because I think we all, and that's the problem when it comes to collegiate or just athletes in general. How many injuries did he have in that Alabama game? I mean, I know Ohio State lost, but wasn't like ribs, some lungs? Yeah. Like, how many injuries did he have in that game?
Yeah, he had got his ribs banged real bad in that Clemson game. Took a shot from Clemson's linebacker, and he missed the last half of the well, not fully the half, but last portion of the first half in the locker room, trying to take care of that. You see him come back out, and he threw a perfect throw to Chris Olave on the sideline, but he's limping back to the sideline after that. So he was definitely banged up going into that. He'll never use that as an excuse, obviously, but yeah, he was certainly banged up, and that Alabama defense was your typical Nick Saban Alabama defense, where they're just good at every level. And if your opponent is not perfect, it's going to pick them apart. And Justin Fields, I can't imagine he was any better than maybe 70% for that game, especially with that rib injury. It was like in the lower back region, like right there, where it's going to hurt anytime you take a deep breath, let alone get hit by a 285-pound defensive end coming flying around the corner at you. So, yeah, he was banged up on that one. Would they hold that game against him? You would want to say no. You would want to say that they hold the body of work over it, but the last image in somebody's head is always going to hold strong. Usually, I mean, obviously, we're giving Trevor Lawrence a little bit of a pass here because he did not have a good game at all against Ohio State when he lost to Justin Fields. But he was one of those that, I mean, that's the first loss he's had since his early high school years. So, he did get a little bit of a pass on that, but as far as with Justin Fields, I don't.
So with that thought of the last image is what we kind of remember, right? And when we all, have those iconic moments where it's John Elway diving into the end zone, it's Ben Roethlisberger tripping. I think it was Bob Sanders when he got that fumble because Jerome Bettis fumbled at the goal line, right? Is that what we're doing with Mac Jones, a quarterback who before 2 months ago was maybe fifth, if not sixth, right? Because you mentioned Trevor Lawrence. You mentioned Zach Wilson. You mentioned Justin Fields, Trey Lance, who took a year off from North Dakota State. He comes in. Jake Fromm is in there, like I mentioned before. Sorry, Jake. And then Mac Jones kind of was in the back. Excuse me, like you mentioned, you had him going to the Patriots, and that was high. When we did our show, Under Pressure Sports, every Sunday, Facebook Live, 10 a.m., I had him going 7th to the Lions because I like that chaos and stuff. That was before they signed Jared Goff. Other than, he looks like he is a typical, pocket passer, what could be the reason that he's skyrocketing? Let me give you some in perspective, Kyle, and ladies and gentlemen, let me give you some Mac Jones stuff. So Mac Jones, 6'3", 215, right? We know everybody lies at this stuff. He spent 3 years in Alabama, but we all know he sat behind Jalen Hurts and Tua Tagovailoa. I think Tua Tagovailoa was there 2 years? 3 years. He was there 3 years. So 2 out of Mac Jones's 3 years was behind Tua Tagovailoa. I'm gonna say his name every time just to flex on people that I can say his name like that, right? So this is a guy with 74 completion rate. He had 6,100 yards, 56 TDs, 7 interceptions. However, there's also a guy who had Devontae Smith, Heisman Trophy winner, and Jalen Waddle, who might have been the Heisman Trophy winner if he did not get hurt. Oh, and they also had a guy who I hope goes number 24 to the Pittsburgh Steelers in Najee Harris. So with that comparison, what has Mac Jones done since winning the trophy over Ohio State to now that has him just skyrocketing up these boards?
Yeah, that is a great question. And, you kind of covered it. There really isn't much. He hasn't done anything. Neither has Justin Fields done anything to cause his to plummet. He hasn't done anything really to cause himself to skyrocket this much. So other than the fact that we're dealing with the same owners and GMs that we've been dealing with for the last 20 some years, that like a quarterback to look a certain way, to play a certain style that, fits more the Mac Jones mold than it does the Justin Fields mold. I do believe Mac Jones is a good, I hesitate to call him decent. I think he's good. All right. But yes, it's hard to tell because like you mentioned, he had the Heisman Trophy winner at receiver. He had another guy that could have been as good had he not broken his ankle. He had the best running back in the country. They had the best offensive line in the country, and they had the best defense in the country. So how much, was he a product of his environment? As we've seen with numerous other Alabama quarterbacks before, outside of Tua, which the jury is still out. We're not sure if Tua is good or bad. Outside of him, Alabama, for God knows how long, has not produced an NFL quality quarterback. So it's not like he's getting the benefit of the doubt of being like a Notre Dame quarterback or, somewhere like that has that pedigree of quarterback that it's like, okay, they went to this school, they're clearly good. I do think he is good. He did lead them to a perfect season. He had good numbers. His completion percentage, like you said, was almost 75%. That's great numbers. So, I that's why I had him middle of that first round. I think he's about that quality. I think you reach at number 3, you're reaching and you're getting, I think you might get a Sam Darnold-esque player out of him, depending on where he lands. If he has some weapons, but looking at those top 3, none of them really got any weapons. So I don't know. I think he's a guy that he needs other players to elevate him. I think Justin Fields, on the other hand, is one of those quarterbacks that can elevate the talent around him, much like a Patrick Mahomes did. All those guys, Tyreek, Travis Kelce, those guys were at Kansas City. I'm not saying he's going to be Patrick Mahomes. Let's pump the brakes on that. Okay. I'm not out here saying Justin Fields is going to be the next Patrick Mahomes, but I'm saying that ability to elevate the talent around you. I believe Justin Fields has the ability to do that, where he can take mid-level receivers and make them really good, if not great receivers. Where I don't see that out of Mac Jones. So I don't know if I'm an NFL GM. I'm not doing this, sending Mac Jones up the board. Certainly not top 3. So I don't know what's going on in the ears of some of these guys. And San Francisco is baffling because it was just about a week ago that they were real strong, leaning on taking Justin Fields and having him replace Jimmy Garoppolo. Now there are reports today saying that they like Mac Jones and might be taking him. How much of that is draft smokescreen? How much of that is real? We won't know until draft day, but just the fact that that's even being entertained is is mind-boggling to me that Justin has dropped so far. Because really, once you get outside of those top three, there's not a lot that are in desperate need of quarterbacks. So you're one of these quarterbacks that does that. You are likely falling out of the top 10.
Let me give you some of the things that are being said about Justin Field, right, as weaknesses. Okay, this part of this is part of the I think it was the WalterFootball.com or something. I pulled it off of. Don't quote me on these websites, folks. I found it on the internet. Okay, internal clock issues. I'm gonna read them all, and then I'm gonna get your reaction. Okay, internal clock issues, insufficient reads, takes unnecessary sacks, work ethic. And part of that is the Ohio State quarterback situation about being the past, but you can either get into that now or get into that later. What that basically saying is, folks, is that they're taking the issues, the predecessors of Ohio State, going back to Troy Smith, Terrell Pryor, JT Barrett, 12 gauge, that once you transition them into the NFL, they did not have success. Troy Smith had a little decent stint with the Ravens. Terrell Pryor ended up moving to wide receiver for the Cleveland Browns, and 12 gauge in the plan. I think he played in the XFL or the AAFL or one of those NFL. FLs that was not the NFL. That was not the big time. Well, didn't get drafted. Or did he get signed? 12 gauge.
He got signed, but then did not end up making the cut, and he ended up playing in Canada. I think he is now part of the new XFL that they're starting up, though.
Okay. Your boy Chris Sims said he has the sloppy arms all over the place. To those tropes, you say what?
I can't stand Chris Sims as it is. That man, and now I cannot stand him. He is, man. We talked about him on one of the shows about a month or two ago, and because he had some analysis like this about somebody else that was like so far wrong that it was ridiculous. But let's go into some of the internal clock. That's hard to say. Has he at times held onto the ball a little long? Yeah, but that I think goes more into a contradictory of his second thing was insufficient reads. He's going through all of his reads. That's the thing about him. Like, he's not, Lamar Jackson where the first read's not there. Okay, I'm running. He's going to break down all of his different reads and then he'll take off and run, which makes him so efficient when he does run because everybody's so far downfield. He has all that green grass before he even gets started. Everybody has a trouble with an internal clock at times. If you go and look at him consistently over the last 2 years, he has not had that issue. Everybody gets got at some point, but it's not like he's sitting back there taking 5-6 sacks a game.
And especially in college, right? Like when you're playing at the Ohio State, when you're playing at Alabama, you're playing at Clemson, right? You at a point, as an analyst, and I don't watch film. I don't have the all 22. Maybe I should get the all 22. I don't know. But it's kind of tough when you're those big time college programs and you can scheme people booty naked open. Like there were times where Devontae Smith is wide booty naked open. How can we go and really judge what Mac Jones' internal clock is when Devontae Smith is running booty naked open down the middle of the field? So I think that's kind of the same way with Ohio State, right? With Chris Olave and all the weapons you got there. How can you really judge his internal clock when the schemes, are what they are? Then, like you said, man, I done seen this dude, Chris cross people out running down the field and stuff. So yeah, stuff like that, the internal clock issue. I'll let you hit the other stuff, but you hit on something that I'm like, you know what? I gotta hop in there real quick because that stuff like that is what is. I'll get into my driving crazy points, but go ahead, Kyle. Go ahead, continue.
Yeah, hit me with some of those other ones that I'm forgetting on.
A big one that I want you to hit on is questionable work ethic.
Oh yes, I on that. Where they got that from, I have no idea. Ryan Day, since he came in, has done nothing but sing the praises of how hard Justin Fields works. Let's not forget, Justin Fields was the foremost voice in getting college football back this last season. Not just for Ohio State, but as a country getting college football back. Was the one that was able to convince Trevor Lawrence to join his cause to we want to play. Like, you're not doing this to protect us. We want to play. Let us play. That was Justin Fields. Why? He's not going to put in all that work to play just to come in and slack off. Justin Fields is one of the hardest working players that has come through Ohio State, is certainly at the quarterback spot in a long time. Not to knock on any of those other guys, but this dude is always on his grind every single day. I mean, as soon as 2 years ago when he threw that interception against Clemson in the playoff game that ended up losing the game for us, he was back in the weight room. He watched film the next day. He was back in the weight room the day after that, getting ready for next season, getting the team ready. Always that guy that's riling everybody together. Hey, all right, let's go. We need to hit the gym. We need to work out. We need to get conditioned. We need to watch some film. So where they got that information, I have absolutely no idea. Whoever their source is for that, they need a new source, because that is boo-boo garbage, terrible analysis. That dude is one of the hardest working dudes that you're going to find in this draft class.
And like we said before, the dude played in the national championship game with messed up ribs. Like, they had to put the rhinoceros morphine in him. I've only seen that needle one. I can only remember that needle one more time. And yes, some folks will make this about me. I don't care. It's my show, as I remind you every week. When the Pittsburgh Steelers were playing the Cincinnati Bengals, I believe it was 16, 17 in the playoffs. Before AB lost his mind, he was still AB. Vontaze Burfict cracked AB. AB was out. He didn't crack Ben Roethlisberger. Ben Roethlisberger could not throw the ball 3 yards. We won the game because Vontaze Burfict lost his mind. Ben could not throw it more than 3 yards. The next week, Kyle, he's slinging this thing 70 yards down the field. What rhino morphine did they hop him up? Tortatol? Y'all know what I'm talking about with the needle and stuff. They stabbed Tyrod Taylor lost his job too. They stabbed him in the ribs and stuff, right? So that's the kind of stuff that Justin Fields was going through to play this game. To say he ain't got no work ethic, man, that's just an awful take, right? Especially when you're doing it for free. But that's a different conversation that we will have. Now,
yes.
Now, you know the history of this program. I know the history of this program. Does Ohio State have an actual quarterback problem? Like, is it a system problem? Is it a scheme problem? Because it's not just Ryan Day, right? It's now you're going to Urban Meyer, and you're even going back to
Jim Tressel.
Yeah, my goodness, old age. Thank you, Tressel. I don't know why I couldn't forget that. Right. You're going back to there. I mean, the last Caucasian quarterback you had was what, Craig Krenzel, right?
Yes.
And
well,
so,
outside of that Luke Fickle year, where for whatever reason you're starting Bowserman over Braxton Miller, but yeah. As far as an actual starting quarterback, Craig Krenzel, you got to go back to 2003.
So, does Ohio State actually have a quarterback issue? Is it the scheme? Is it just the place? Like, what is it that where these guys, when they go from Ohio State and they are studs? Because Troy Smith, hate him or love him, was a stud. Braxton Miller was a stud. JT Barrett was a stud. Justin Fields is a stud, right? Terrell Pryor beat Michigan down too many times. Let's not get into it. What's going on there, in your opinion, in your mind?
Yeah, there certainly is an image issue as far as Ohio State quarterbacks go, because for all the reasons, the guys you just mentioned. I mean, I honestly cannot think of a successful Ohio State quarterback at the NFL level. Go back as far along as you want. I mean, you got to go back to like Hopalong Cassidy in the 40s. Like, it's that bad. Like, right. But at the same time, how much are you going to hold where a kid chose to go to school to play over his actual abilities? Does Ohio State have a quarterback issue when it comes to the NFL? I mean, the numbers are what they are. Yes. We have not had successful quarterbacks when they've gone to the next level. I think Justin Fields is a different breed from a lot of these other guys. Does it look similar? Yes, but a lot of those guys were more outside of, 12 Gauge could barely move, but outside of like him and JT, the other guys were more run first. Terrell loved to run. Braxton loved to run. Those guys, they wanted to get out, and if they had a guy open, then they would throw it. Right. Justin uses his legs as a bailout and as a last resort kind of thing. Okay, nobody's open, I'm going to take off. He would have, you'd look at it, they have 13, 15 carries a game, but maybe 5 or 6 of them were like designed whereas the other ones were, all right, I got 20 yards in front of me. I'm just, why pass it when I can run for this first down?
Right.
But and I do think he is a different breed. I think, you and I kind of talked about this a little bit before in terms of with Patrick Mahomes, because Texas Tech had a lot of those same issues. They had that system that gave you a great looking quarterback, all these stats. They always have the top 10, top 2 or 3 in terms of passing yards and touchdowns, because all they do is throw the ball. And Texas Tech had never really had great success at the NFL level with their quarterbacks. And then Patrick Mahomes comes along and rewrites that. Now everybody looks at Texas Tech quarterbacks differently now.
Not just Patrick Mahomes, but Patrick Mahomes and Baker Mayfield went to Texas Tech before he transferred to Oklahoma. Which, side note, as everyone asks questions about Cliff Kingsbury, how did you have Baker Mayfield and Patrick Mahomes at Texas Tech, and y'all still stunk? But that's another episode for another Ask Black Dude. Why isn't Mac Jones getting hit with this? Because Alabama has some of this thing too, right? I mean, the best quarterbacks Alabama's had in its history, right? You go back to Joe Namath, you get Ken Stabler, Bart Starr, but then other than that is guys like AJ McCarron, who I had on the season as a backup and I was angry. It's guys like Greg McElroy, right? I mean, guys who yes, won a championship, but they flamed out in the NFL. I mean, you can even take schools like Penn State, who had Christian Hatchenberg that didn't work out, right? Isn't Mac Jones kind of in that same class where yes, you had a great team that won, you went to a great school that won, but yeah, the history of these quarterbacks are not good.
Yeah, no, you bring up a great point because Alabama is in that same boat. Those guys you named, none of them were. I mean, Stabler was maybe at the 70s with Alabama. After that, they got nothing.
Right.
So you would think it would be the same cause, and all I can see a difference is you hate to bring it up, but you got to at the same time. It's a race thing.
Right.
You still got all of us that are in our age understand that there really isn't any difference mentally between a black quarterback and a white quarterback. As long as they're both putting in the same kind of work. But you got these owners who are all ancient, and these GMs that a lot of them are just buddies of the owners, where they're stuck in that old mindset of, especially when they see a black mobile quarterback, it's like, where it's like he can run, he's athletic, maybe we can make him a wide receiver or a running back, but he's not going to be our quarterback. So that's that's the only thing I can't understand the rise.
Yeah, Bill Polian did that. Bill Polian did that with Lamar Jackson, right? Bill Polian,
yes, he did.
Executive of the Year, drafted Peyton Manning, right? Bill Polian did that with Lamar Jackson, where he said he should be a wide receiver, running back, right? One of those things. Lamar Jackson was a guy. Let me 9,000 yards passing at Louisville, right? 69 touchdowns passing, 27 interceptions. The completion issue he had was 57%. Now, that problem was because he did not have wide receivers, ladies and gentlemen. He did not have Devontae Smith and Jalen Waddle, right? Just now you mentioned that dual threat, 4,100 yards rushing, 50 touchdowns on the ground. It is the same. It is the same problem where for some reason we cannot get past just certain biases, right? But we will dive into that even deeper, right? Because I got numbers and I got names for the history going back to the 2010 draft, right?